And get started. We can let others join, when they're able. So my name is Cade Wilcox with Boost Patients. I'm the CEO, and super excited to be here this morning, and really hope you guys have some questions. So Michael and I have some slides. We're going to kind of talk about marketing. We're going to talk about lead follow up, kind of get into some of those details. But we're in hopes that there are things that you guys want to dialogue about and that we can chat through while we're on the call. So please don't be shy. If you have questions or comments, drop them in there, and we'd certainly love this to be a conversation versus Michael and I just talking the whole time. But Michael, I would love for you to give an introduction. You and I met a handful of months ago with a shared client, and it's been really fun to get to know you and Hannah on your team. You've been doing this a long time in this space, I think close to 25 years. And so share with folks who don't already know you kind of what your background is and what Glacial does.
Yeah, first of all, Kate, thank you very much for allowing me to be a guest on here with you. I think this should be a very interesting conversation and one that's been sort of plaguing medical practices throughout the year, which is, converting leads to consults and moving that forward. Um, for all of you, I am Michael Dubkowski. I am the CEO of Glacial Multimedia. Glacial's been doing patient acquisition for elective medical practices since the year 2000. It may be no surprise to everybody, but Glacial is very, very well entrenched in the ophthalmology space. Every time we try to get into a new space, it's difficult. So that's our home. We love it there. We know how to recruit eye care patients, but we do have other medical practices. We have dental clients. We have aesthetic practices. We have chiropractors and cardiologists and urologists. So we do everything, but ophthalmology is our specialty.
That's awesome. And you've been around a long time, haven't you?
I started initially in doing medical marketing around 1997, 1998. I think,
Okay.
I always consider myself one of those fortunate people. I sort of came out of college right when basically the internet was coming out and labels
Okay.
were being approved by the FDA. So the convergence of those two things got me really going in the elective space, and then decided to start a company after having worked for a consulting firm. My very first clients, I owe everything to them. They were great, wonderful people, and they kept me kind of doing digital marketing in the medical space.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's jump in. Real quick in the chat, in the Q&A box, for those who are on, share if you're here kind of to dive into the marketing or the lead follow-up. I'd be really curious what your main pain point is. So maybe a better question would be, what is your main pain point? Is it marketing related? Is it generating leads? Is it lead follow-up? Kind of share with us like kind of why you're on this call and what your biggest pain point is at your clinic. All right, Michael, I say let's jump in. So
Great. Let's start
I'll
out.
turn it over to you and you can fire away and I'll kind of monitor the chat here.
Great.
And if y'all do have questions or want to contribute to the conversation, we are having a technical snag with the chat, so you can just use the Q&A function and you can still chat in that way, and we'll see it.
Well, thanks, Jonah. Okay, I'll start off with the stage of generating leads here. I think that's everybody's sort of it's definitely something that always comes up on elective medical practices radars is, how can I generate more leads, more traffic, more leads. This obviously leads to more procedures. So, what are the typical methodologies for generating leads? We're going to start out with a little basic flywheel here about the different ways that leads are generated. And I think that it's a very good wheel because, I think not all leads are the same, right? And I think it's really important out of the gate before we get into anything like SEO or paid search related matters that we talk about a pretty simple concept that like, there's two types of leads. They're going to be like now buyers, leads that are like pretty much ready to engage. They've already been sold. They simply want to get a procedure. We call those bottom of funnel leads. And then those are non-now buyers. And these are people that are doing like, educational research, and I always ask people, that are working in the eye care space, that maybe need to learn about, refractive lens exchange or LASIK or something like that. And think about like a hair transplant person that's like, knows nothing about hair transplants. They're not going to buy the hair transplant immediately upon beginning the lead. There's going to be like an educational nurturing process that needs to happen. So these types of leads are what I call non-now buyers. These are what are called top of funnel leads. And let's be honest here, they require a certain level of education, right? And as a practice, that needs to be considered in your marketing. You need to think about, hey, am I going to have an educational drip campaign? Am I going to use a CRM to do texting? How am I going to engage that patient? How am I going to get them to be comfortable with the procedure? Let's get over the hurdle of fear first, then we'll help them get over that hurdle of price. I think those are really important things to understand because they're typically two of the main reasons people don't move forward with a particular elective medical procedure. So, all right, we'll get into the wheel here, and then I want to break this down into terms of like what types of media work best. I'm sure everybody on the call is probably doing some level of this right now. Let's start with the SEO front. I've been doing SEO for a very long time. Happy to answer any questions on it. What I do like about SEO is that these are more bottom of funnel leads. These are people that went to the search engine and they had an intent. Their intent was they searched something that they're looking to buy, right? This isn't like an interruption where they got interrupted by a radio ad or a social media ad. This is way more bottom of funnel. And quite frankly, an area that I find a lot of practices completely overlook as part of their digital strategy. You need to be on that first page of Google to really be considered. And likewise, what I notice is a massive increase of lead gen when you get over that 5 to 3 range. If you can be in that, if you're number 1, number 2, and you're solid in those areas, you're probably getting a decent amount of organic SEO leads. Let's also put local in that category. We call it local SEO at Glacial. This is your map pack stuff, right? And this is a very important place to be. You're not going to necessarily show up on every search in your locale, but you want to be in that map pack for as many particular keywords as possible. Those are all intent-based search leads. And if I was running a practice, I'd want to know what my lead gen intake off the organic forums are. Right. I mean, everybody's reporting on social media or paid search leads, but do you know how many organic leads, and are you tracking those organic leads to conversion? Right. And so you can actually say, oh, wow, like, look, we're getting a 20% conversion rate on our organic leads, but we're getting 2% on our social media ads. Like, the people are stuck there right now. And the easiest way out of this is to do a quick audit on your organic SEO, quick audit on your local search. Are you using a citation cleaning service? Are you actively getting reviews to improve in the map pack? And on the SEO angle, how do you compare to your competitors? Are you a DA 10 versus the dominant person that's a DA 45? These are really basic SEO things that, like, you probably should know at an admin level at the practice, even physician level, or a marketing director level at a practice. So let's go a little bit more into kind of what types of media work best. Organic does work good, but let's be honest, paid search does work very well, and a lot of people are often reluctant to jump right in on Google and go all in on that. Some people think that, like, people don't click on paid search ads. Well, they do. And, most of our practices get a lot of leads from this. And especially, budgets can vary. If you don't have a good paid search company, definitely, like, there are specialists out there. Like at Glacial, we have a team of people, all they do all day long is paid search. They're very in tune to what's going on. They know the places at Google that you want to stay away from. Are you doing machine learning, right? These are the kind of things that they're going to be advised you on. Does your paid search company outperform, the automated AI piece of, like, placing paid search? Those are great things to understand. Paid search, it's another intent-based kind of marketing, digital marketing. So highly recommended. These leads are going to be a little bit harder to close than, like, let's say, the organic leads we were just talking about, but they still convert at a decent level, and they're definitely worth investing in. They may require a drip campaign, a very rigorous call schedule that I'm sure Cade's going to get into how he handles this kind of stuff. But they're a solid lead, and they're going to vote for this as one of my top forms of acquiring digital marketing leads. I think paid search has been around for a long time. It's proven. I think you need to be using a landing page with paid search and not necessarily a secondary page on the website. The reason I say that is because you're going to get one shot here, and you need to impress them. And a lot of secondary pages on websites are lackluster. So if you just send them to a page of text, you need to have engagement objects like self-tests, schedule a free consult, your phone numbers. These things need to be extremely prevalent. So I like a custom design landing page that's isolated from the organic leads and also isolated from any social media leads. What we do is set up proxy landing pages so that we can have a special one for Facebook and a special one for Google paid ads. The next category of ads that work well, and it's once again, we keep going deeper and deeper down the controversial ladder here, and that would be your social media leads. Definitely going to have a lower conversion rate than what you would get on a paid search lead. However, I still want to, if I'm a marketing director, I still want to get these people, in the mix. Okay. I think what I love about social media, Facebook and Instagram leads is you can get these at a very relatively low cost per acquisition compared to that of Google. Like I said, might not be as, mid to bottom of the funnel, definitely a top of funnel lead. This is where you kick in your educational campaigns, your drip campaigns, you work with your CRMs, and you start the educational process. You go back to that batch. They haven't converted in 6 months. You do a cold lead responder series. And once again, you're remarketing to them and trying to help answer the questions that are holding them back from taking the next particular step. While we're on this topic too, I just wanted to kind of point out so far we've had a very focused approach to direct marketing. Direct marketing is great, super great for lead gen. If you're a mathematician, data person on the side of marketing, you're going to love this kind of stuff because it's super quantifiable. But I really feel like it's important to address a little bit more of an esoteric area, and this would be branding, because I feel like branding is really left out, and I'm feeling like a little bit of a resurgence coming on, people caring more about how does the interior of your office look? How does your website look, right? Like these things matter. They matter psychologically to someone that's about to drop $5,000 to $10,000 on an elective medical procedure. It simply has a psychological impact, whether your waiting room is messy or your website is sloppy. Like these things matter. And they might often get lost in the shuffle when you're talking like this hardcore digital direct marketing stuff. And let's pause for a moment and understand branding has some value. Branding can be getting your waiting room right, getting your website right, maybe you upgrade your logo. What do you have for internal stuff going on in the office? These are branding things that can like often get overlooked, and always good to do a little bit of a refresh, in terms of like what are you presenting to the public? So
yeah, Michael, that's really good. I'm thinking back just to, out of the last 20 sales calls. And one of the biggest surprises I have when I'm reviewing their website ahead of the time is how different the website communicates about who they are, their values, what an experience with them would be like compared to the experience with them actually. And I think the brand online, or like you're even saying, even as far as even the office aesthetic and all that, should at a minimum reflect the same kind of experience you're going to have with the clinic in person. And the vast majority of the clinics we work with, and I'm sure you would say the same, that when they're engaging with the patient in the office and in a one-to-one relationship, the experience is phenomenal. And I think your brand should seek to communicate the same kind of value and quality that you're getting with them in person. And I don't think you can say that about a lot of people's, brand.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Cade, because a lot of people are like, hey, the website's the new front door. At least it's a secondary door, There's still a lot of people that would come to the practice and base everything on that. But, a lot of their first interactions with the practice are through the website. So getting that right, not a difficult process in the year 2024, right?
Nope.
There's great ways to build a good website.
Right.
It's amazing people still mess it up, but like it does happen. It is what it is. I think another great way to look at this branding topic, if the word branding is just so beat up and useless to you out there, let's look at it maybe from a different perspective, okay? And that would be something that I like to call online persona, right? And like think about how you're presenting, and you look at elective medical websites, and you're going to see a wide variety of these online personas, right? Let me just detail a few of those for you. you're first going to have one that's a very physician centric. I'm a super doctor. I'm a best cataract surgeon. U.S. and News World Report. And they're just, the home pages are kind of littered with these accolades, these awards, right? And rightfully so. Part of the value proposition is experience, right? How do you show experience? I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying that experience. Hey, well, experience. Okay, yeah, we won this award, we won that award. I mean, we even do some of that at Glacial. We're Google Premier partner. We like to tell people about it. Nothing wrong with that, but how do you position that with the next level of online persona? And that is really something out of Donald Miller's book, which is like a more patient-centric website. Like, if you break it down, like the patient at the end of the day is really thinking, like, what can you do for me? Like that's most important. That whether their surgeon won, top cataract surgeon award or not, at the end of the day, they're really trying to do whatever they need to do, with this procedure, right? And so, like, I think if your website takes a patient-centric approach, like, that's pretty cool. The third type, and I'm just kind of, we could probably break these out into 5 or 6 different types, but the third type is the clueless type, right? This is where you don't want to be. This is where your website looks like it's from 1998. It might be a static JPEG. There's a block picture of a doctor with a welcome paragraph on there. This is exactly where you don't want to be, right? But where do you want to be? And when's the last time as a clinic you guys sat down and said, like, what is our online persona? What do patients think about us when they get to this website? Do they think that we're caring, loving, and we're gonna, save the world for them, or is it extremely focused on the physician figure of the practice? And where do you guys want to be? Maybe it's a blend. So anyway, I thought it was important to point that out.
Yeah, that's really good. One of my favorite clinics to work with literally is in that second bucket. They're solving for the patient. Like, they literally exist to serve the patient and to solve for the patient. And in this particular case, the physician's been practicing over 30 years. Everyone in the industry knows him. He's one of the very first LASIK surgeons in the country, trained literally thousands of surgeons. And that's not what they lead with on the site. And so, of all the people that could be accolade led first, to your point, they're really kind of solving for the patient. So I'm really glad you brought up the personas, and really a great thing to, like, think about critically in terms of how are you positioning yourself online, and what's the persona that you're giving a potential new patient. It's really good.
No, it's great, and just something to think about. And we're talking about these digital marketing modalities. Once you establish what your sort of persona is, you can deploy that throughout social media. You can deploy that throughout your website design. You can deploy it through paid search. You can deploy it. Once you have that sort of thesis as to what we are and how our marketing communications are going to go, then I think it becomes, like, a lot easier. So that's a little bit on branding and design. Let's go into the digital PR realm next. This is a new realm for many, and there's a couple of different categories here. Recently at Glacial, we decided that we were going to develop a department dedicated to this. This is like your forgotten child of digital marketing. This is your content marketing, right? This is your link building. This is your PR news releases. When's the last time your practice has done a PR release? These can be extremely valuable. I like to do them. If I'm going to make a recommendation, I'm saying 4 times a year. These are massive link building efforts. Your website can gain massive credibility with these. It's a little bit of a secret sauce there. And a lot of people, like, if you're tracking quantifiable results, it can be difficult. But, like, I notice it, for example, in a practice's organic SEO. Oh God, geez. We did that digital PR release. We bounced up 3 spots, like, little hard to find areas like that. I found digital PR to be extremely useful. Content marketing, blog work, all this stuff is, it's really good to be doing. A lot of it does, trickle down to affecting the organic SEO piece of it. There is a part to this that I really like, just worth mentioning, because I think this is a growth spot for many practices, and this is in the earned media category, right? So in earned media, this is like some PR, websites will have like databases of, like, local, like, earned media. So you can email the TV program director at the TV station to see if they're interested. You're coming out with a new procedure. Maybe they'd be interested in doing a show on that. Same with radio, same with newspapers. And if you can get a hold of a database with that'd be absolutely wonderful. So that's a little bit on the digital PR piece. That can be a little bit more challenging for practices. Like I said, a few more things I want to go over. And I think this is going to segue really good into what Cade does, because I know he's heavily involved with CRM work. We've been obviously running MD prospects for 15 years now, so we've seen the good, bad, and the ugly with CRMs, and how that works and what's required at the practice level to kind of make this successful. So we try really hard to equip practices to be able to have a solution. Like I said, whether that's on the call center side or that's on the marketing team side, I think it's worth discussing the CRM. And I think it goes back to the larger question of, why do practices get frustrated with marketing, right? They get frustrated with marketing because maybe they're not making enough conversions, right? It's not usually the lead gen, although it could be. It could be that they're frustrated because they're paying too much. It could be that they're frustrated because I have 300 leads and they're stuck in a bottleneck from lead to consult and they're not moving forward, right? That could be a number of issues. So I thought it was important to kind of, as we segue into the call piece here, that could be your marketing leads aren't good. That could be you're calling the patient back once and that's not going to be sufficient enough to move them to the next phase. So those pieces right there can be, the answer is very different, whether that's a callback issue or you simply have your scale weighted. So you're not, you're getting too many leads that convert at a 2% rate. And, that's typically going to be your Facebook, Instagram category. And you're not getting enough organic leads that convert at more of a 20%, right? So how do I balance that mix out? And then how can I bring my branding pieces in there to sort of help me to move to the next level on that call piece? And then lastly, another part here I think worth bringing up is, do you run into the campaign with no goals? Do you have some offers? I think if you get offers, that's going to exponentially increase your lead value. And maybe I'm preaching to the choir and that's old news, but I think, nowadays with some, increased fear, some economic, impact, especially on the lower demo 18 to 24, I think it is important to think about offers once again. And, where's your practice going to sit? Where does that sit with your online persona? Where does that sit with your ethos? Are you absolutely no offers? Are you willing to entertain some? Or are you more a discount model? Let's do the $1,000 off thing that people do. So anyway, that's just what my piece of this here today. I think that we've been really following what's going on in the call scene lately tremendously at Glacial, because we want to help our practices convert more. We see a large stack in lead and then the consult stacks lower. And so the more we can find new ways of getting them out of that bottleneck and into consult, practices do a phenomenal job at converting these once they get to that consult phase. They see the doctor's very confident, staff is competent. That typically is not where the breakdown is. So, thanks for having me on today, Cade.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can provide some insight into, how do you break down that bottleneck?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate all that. And for those of you on the webinar, make sure you drop any questions you have for Michael about marketing in general here in the Q&A box, and we'll get those at the end. Yeah, you nailed it. So this is kind of where I want to start is, the first thing I want to share with those on the call is Boost is not a marketing company. We do not do any marketing. We are a leads follow-up company. So you have new patient leads coming into your practice, and that's really the value we bring. And I love this graphic because this it happens almost on every single call we have with the clinic. Is they're spending, in many cases, thousands of dollars. And Michael, this is gonna be very familiar to you. Clinics will spend thousands of dollars on marketing, whether it's content marketing, whether it's their website, and it's usually digital ads. We're spending $2,000. We're spending $5,000. Some clinics are spending $20,000. And we're getting all these leads, but we're not seeing that translate into consultations. And this is why, is you have all kinds of holes in the bottom of your bucket inside the clinic when a new lead comes in. And this is the pain point. This is the problem that Boost solves. And candidly, this is how Michael and I met, is that he had a handful of clients that are spending really good money on marketing. The Glacial team is doing a really good job generating leads. Those leads are coming in and they're not translating to consults. I really empathize with marketing agencies, if I'm being honest, because a marketing agency can do everything right, which is really hard to do in 2024, right? There's a lot of marketing agencies, there's a lot of different tools, there are a lot of different variables. Google's constantly changing their algorithm, Meta is constantly making it harder and harder. The competitive landscape from a marketing perspective, in my opinion, has never been more challenging than it is now. So a Glacial type partner will do everything right, generate the leads, and then they're also having to answer for, well, where are all my consults? And so this is what we're going to talk about from the Boost section. Joni, you can go ahead and go. So we've done something interesting recently. We just mystery shopped just under 700 clinics. And in this case, it's a group of about 20 private equity companies that own all these clinics. So all 700 clinics, it was just under 700, it's in this like 690 something. And we mystery shopped every single one of them. And this is just one example of 4 clinics that were mystery shopped, and not a single clinic followed up with our online lead. Go to the next one. This one's even worse. This one was 32 clinics. Out of the 32 clinics that we mystery shopped, 26 clinics never followed up at all. So zero follow up. And just so you know, like when we're submitting these forms, we're picking a location really close to the clinic. So it's a very relevant lead. We're raising our hand and we're saying, hey, we're interested in LASIK, or we're interested in RLE. And so we're very specific in terms of what we're interested in. We want to know more information. And out of 32 clinics in this particular case, 26 of them never followed up. And this is happening over and over and over again. Michael, have you seen this in your experience, working with practices?
It's very common.
Yeah. Go to the next slide. This is something we've seen after mystery shopping hundreds and hundreds of clinics, is that typically what you'll get from the clinic is you might get a call or two, or you might get a email. Oftentimes, none of it's personalized. That's another thing that we see that's very common. It's just this kind of generic response. I got one recently. I was mystery shopping, and I got one, and it said, "We'll follow up with you within 48 hours." It didn't say mine. It didn't say, "Hey, Kate, thanks for your inquiry." It was not personalized at all, and it said, "We'll get back to you in 48 hours." Which I was like, "Man, 48 hours is a long time." Number one, and then number two, guess what? I never got followed up with at all. Not an email, not a text, not a phone call. And so the challenge that the clinics have with follow up is significant. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. I bet you of the 700 clinics, it's at least 80 to 90% didn't follow up, and maybe a handful of them did, and they're only following up one time. And so not only, as you can see in this chart, are clinics not following up, but when they do follow up, they'll only follow up once or twice. And if the new patient lead does not respond, then they stop following up altogether. Go ahead, Jonah. So why is this? I think there are a lot of variables, but there's a few that we've seen quite commonly. And Michael, I'd be curious if this is something you've seen as well. The team member at the clinic who's responsible for new lead follow-up is wearing multiple hats. They're in charge of follow-up. They're in charge of answering the phone. They're in charge of welcoming someone into the clinic, or maybe they're helping with some of the consults. But the main thing is that we see over and over and over again, they're wearing multiple hats. And so therefore follow-up is not prioritized. And it's more or less, we'll get to that when we can get to that. And that's a real challenge. I think go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, and I think really, at the end of the day, it's really important to understand that, this took me a long time, so I'm not trying to be critical here, but this is a sales position. If someone's a tech and they want to take this on, wow, for me, that's a very big stretch. I've been down that road many times, and what I generally find is that someone's going to tech versus pick up the phone and call 20 patients back at 4:30, in the afternoon, and people will gravitate towards not doing that uncomfortable job of just picking up the phone. And for me, it was it was before I started Glacial. I'd come out of QVS, and and I was looking for a job, and I applied for a job as a refractive coordinator of all things, believe it or not, at a practice. And I go in, I had my meeting, and I didn't get the job. And I ended up working from the Glacial level for the practice like 5 years later. I said, hey, why didn't you hire me for the refractive coordinator job? And he's like, you thought it was patient education. This is a sales job, and that's why we didn't hire you. And I was like, oh, okay, like that makes a whole lot of sense. And a lot of the best converters, at this job are salespeople. I think like I'm not going to get into like what kind of salesperson do you want to be on this talk, but like there needs to be some element of like, hey, my job is to make this thing convert to surgery.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think for the clinics that have the time and the capacity to invest in that role, they should do it. You nailed it. You nailed my second bullet point here is right now at clinics, we never have talked to someone who wakes up every morning looking forward to that sales conversation. I mean, you summarized it perfectly. Like they gravitate away from it because they don't want to have it, right? They don't want to be in charge of following up 15 times. They don't want to be on the phone. And so what we find in the clinics is that the people responsible for follow-up don't wake up every morning excited about sales. I mean, excited about those sales conversations and excited about hunting people down, because, and we'll get to this in a moment, but it oftentimes takes a lot of touches, a lot of efforts to be able to get someone to respond. And then lastly, one of the reasons we see there's such an issue is that clinics lack the time, talent, and skill to have a robust new patient lead follow-up process. And so all these are variables as to why clinics really, really struggle.
Hey, Kate, what does the sales conversation look like in the context of when you do get a patient lead on the phone? What does that conversation look like in an ideal way versus how many practices will handle it?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're actually going to get that out here in a moment when we walk through our process, but there's a couple of things that I think are extremely critical that have to exist within the new patient conversation. One would be speed to lead. So, I mentioned that clinic I mystery shopped, and it was like a 48, their auto email said 48 hours, way too long. And so speed to lead really, really, really matters. I think another thing matters, and again, we'll show this to you in our own system. And by the way, for the clinics that are on here, this is not a sales pitch for Boost. Like if you can do all these things on your own, I mean, that's really why we're having this webinar, is like to kind of show you the blueprint. And so if you can do this, absolutely do it. But I think the second thing related to Jonah's question about what is the ideal sales conversation, it's multiple different types of communication channels so that the new patient lead gets to dictate and decide how they want to communicate. Some people want to be on the phone. They don't want a text message. They don't want an email. They want to talk to a person, and they want to navigate the conversation with a real human. There are other people that don't want to talk to a human. They don't want a phone call. They don't want to be on the phone. They want to be able to text, or they want to be able to email. So I think the second thing, Jonah, is you have to be able to have multiple communication channels so that the new patient lead has optionality in terms of how they ask their questions, how they engage and interact with the clinic, so that they can, pick basically the communication channel that they want. Go to the next slide for me. This is some interesting data, and I actually got this from some of this from a webinar that I attended that was phenomenal. They also mystery shopped some clinics, and a technology manufacturer called Zeiss, and Michael actually was on this webinar as well. It's actually how I met Michael. It's some fascinating data, and I'm almost certain they got this from a Harvard Business study. But even just anecdotally, I can look at this and go, man, this is our experience. But just listen to, if you're a clinic, just listen to some of the challenges of slow responses, not to mention the non-responses, but the slow responses. After 5 minutes, the odds of connecting and qualifying with a lead drops 80%. So speed to lead really, really matters. That whole, well, give us 24 hours or give us 48 hours. It's a losing proposition. 30% of your leads will go to a competitor if you don't respond quickly enough. 50% of leads will work with a clinic that contacts them first. And then if you contact a lead within the first hour, you're 7 times more likely to qualify that lead versus contacting them even 2 hours later. And that sounds kind of crazy, especially when you're mystery shopping and you're dealing with clinics that, they will get back to you, but it's the next day. Man, this is a game of inches. And if you're not capitalizing on on this kind of competitive environment, you're really, really missing out. Go ahead, Jonah. So here's a big takeaway for you. So if you're a clinic and you're like, yep, that's us, you know, our lead specialists, they're wearing multiple hats. That's a challenge. Our speed to lead is really, really slow. Like we'll get back to them the same day, but it's usually by the end of the day. Like if all these things that we're talking about are one of your challenges, here's how you can solve it. We call it a combination of technology and people. So the speed to lead, we've talked about that. Really, really, really important. We have AI running, and what we'll do with clinics is we'll build out a knowledge base specific to their clinic so that it's highly, highly personalized. And within 60 seconds of a new lead coming in, the AI is communicating to them, and it's personalized and it's fast. So 60 seconds, submitting a form, a self-test, coming in via an ad, you're getting contacted within 60 seconds. The other thing that's really, really important, and I alluded to this earlier, is you're getting multiple communication touch points so that the new patient lead can communicate with you how they prefer. So not only is speed to lead important, so you need to take that into consideration, but how are you communicating to that lead so that they have that optionality? We have patient concierge agents that literally their only job is to follow up with new patient leads for the clinics that we work with. And so again, this is for those folks who want to hear from someone, who want to talk to a real person. They have that optionality. And so and then you see here this word visibility, and Michael alluded to it earlier when he was talking about empty prospects and they're really, really effective and good CRM. I was talking to a clinic last week and I said, how are you tracking your leads? And this happened to be a really big system. And so they had a lot of leads, which makes, you know, the way they're tracking the leads even more egregious. And they're doing it with, the physician said, pen and paper. And I'm sure he was being sarcastic, but what he was saying is, we're not tracking the leads. We have no visibility into how are we tracking these new leads coming in. And so that's another element that you have to identify. So just to kind of sum up our patient conversion system that you could model within your clinic, you've got to be much faster. You got to be speed to lead. You've got to have multiple touch points in terms of how you're communicating to those leads, and including the human touch. And you've got to have some visibility into, as Michael was saying, where the lead's coming from, where are they at in the process, how many times have they been followed up with, as you move them to consultation. Go ahead to the next slide, Jonah. So just in comparison, you remember that chart where I showed you where like most clinics will follow up with an email or a phone call, or maybe a clinic might follow up 2 or 3 times. In comparison, this is what we're doing for our clinics. First of all, as I shared, we have AI running 24/7. So if a new patient lead comes in after hours, they're still getting that really fast response within 60 seconds, regardless of what time of day they come in, whether it's a holiday, weekend, after hours, et cetera, et cetera. We actually see a lot of engagement with our clinics after hours, which makes a lot of sense. Not every new patient lead is able to kind of think about these things during the workday. And so we see a lot of engagement there. The other thing, a new lead that comes in through our clinics is they're going to get a personalized text message every day for 10 days. We're going to send out 3 personalized emails, and then we're going to make 10 phone calls. Now, this looks really, really aggressive, and it is, and it's supposed to. Sometimes I'll have a clinic say, hey, is that too much? And I'm like, we don't really see a lot of issues with it being too much, number one. Number two, we want to err on the side of too much than not at all, right? So most of these clinics we're dealing with aren't following up at all, or if they are, it's only once or twice. We would much rather err on the side of aggressive. And then the third thing to know is almost all of our new patient leads are engaging with our communication in some form or fashion. So the cadence of communication changes here. But if you were to ignore all of our communication for the first 10 days, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get the 10 text messages, the 3 emails, and a phone call every day. And Derek, I think this alludes to your question is what do you feel is the best lead follow-up cadence for self-test leads? You can kind of figure out what you're most comfortable with, but you can see here, based on our experience and what we're doing for clinics, we're very, very aggressive. So someone does one of those self test leads, they're getting all of this communication. They come in from the contact us form, they're getting all of this communication. They're coming in from a landing page like Michael was talking about earlier, from a Google pay-per-click ad or a meta ad, they're getting all of this communication. So I would encourage you, in terms of your cadence, figure out what you're comfortable with, and also what your technology is able to do, what you're able to automate versus what might be manual. But the reality is we think that speed to lead, multiple communication channels, and then a lot of follow-up really matters. The last thing I'll say about this slide here is that we do this for weeks and months at a time. One of the things we're constantly saying to our clinics is we want to help you maximize the investments that you're making into your marketing. So you're investing $5,000 a month into Google pay-per-click ads, or whatever it is. We want to help you maximize that. The reality is, every new patient lead that comes in isn't always ready to move forward now. In fact, most of them are not ready to move forward now. The majority of them are filling it out. They're in the inquiry stage. They're trying to hunt down some information, and so they're not ready for a consultation within the first 3 days, 5 days, 10 days of reaching out. And so that constant nurturing and following up of the leads is a really big deal. So Derek, going back to your question, not only is the cadence of follow-up right after they submit that self-test important, but also thinking long-term, how are we going to maximize that new patient lead by following up continuously and for a long time? So these are the kinds of variables that you need to think through if you're gonna implement this kind of protocol within your own clinic. These are the kinds of things that we're doing for our practices, and the thing that you need to think through as well. I'm not going to spend any time on these next slides, but I do want to point you to them. In fact, we have a really robust PDF that shows examples of the AI text. It shows examples of text messages. It shows examples, or actually you can scan these QR codes, and I'll send you the PDF. And you can listen to our patient concierge agents having calls with the new patient leads. You can hear their voice. You can hear their empathy. You can hear how they're trying to have a sales call, not kind of a clinical call, if you will. And so you can get examples of this. But I guess what I want to do is two things. First of all, both Michael and I are willing to kind of give you a couple of things. Michael would be happy to do a marketing audit. So if you're on this call and you're in marketing and you're interested in kind of evaluating what you're looking, or what you need to be doing in your clinic, Michael and his team would be more than happy to kind of audit what you're doing, make some recommendations, and no strings attached. And so that's something that Mike would be willing to do. Our team would be willing to mystery shop you. So if you want us to mystery shop you and see what it's like, in fact, even if we're not doing it, you should mystery shop yourself and see what your team's follow-up looks like. One of the unique things that I hear on our calls all the time is that the clinic actually thinks they're way better at follow-up than they really are. They think, oh no, Sally's following up with all of our leads. And they've just kind of convinced themselves that's what Sally is doing. And in reality, that's not what Sally is doing. And so you either need to mystery shop yourself, or we're more than happy to mystery shop you and send you the results. But those are both things, the marketing audit or the mystery shopping, that would bring you a lot of value and help you kind of think critically about how you might need to move your strategy, your processes, your protocols forward. Okay, before we wrap up, Michael, anything that you would add to any of what I shared, or anything from you? And then second, if there are any questions, now would be the time to fire those off in the chat.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd really like to add here is that order of operations. Before you go out and hire a fancy marketing company or a marketing consultant, make sure you have your internal process locked down. If you determine that you can't do that at the practice level, and you have an honest conversation with the team about it, and you need to move to a third party that's going to do that for you, that's okay. But that needs to be step one. Right? Where you don't want to be is where you're generating 900 leads in a quarter and you're not calling them back, right? The order of operations. So getting that process, whether you're going to do it internally, commit to hiring people, do the internal training, fine, or a third party, whatever that may be, put that step first.
Yeah.
And that might not be something you hear from most marketing companies. They want to jump right in, get you leads and everything, but like that is the healthiest approach.
That's really good. And what I've seen is like for the marketing managers that are doing exactly what you're talking about, Michael, it's air coverage for you. It's a backup for you, right? Like you're a marketing manager or you're working with a marketing partner. Your job is to generate leads. I see this over and over and over and over again. The physician says to the marketing company, "Hey, your leads are, your leads are bad. But, we're generating a bunch of leads, but we're not seeing consults." And if I'm the marketing company, I'm like, man, our job is to generate the leads, not to book the consults. And so the same would be true for you if you're a marketing manager, really digging into that, like the lead follow up and the process and the protocol and who's doing it and what does it look like. It's gonna, I mean, I don't mean to overstate it, but it's going to protect you too, right? It's going to give you backup when, the practice manager or the physician are like, "Hey, we're not getting any surgeries," but you're like, "Well, we just generated 273 leads." And so looking into the follow-up, it really is very, very critical. So awesome. All right. I don't see any questions. Any other questions before we wrap up? We really appreciate y'all joining us. We have a few extra minutes, and so if there are any questions, we're happy to answer them. If not, we'll wrap this thing up.
While we let those float in, Kate, I'd love to hear you just talk about, you didn't really get the chance to go into detail. When we do get someone on the phone, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, our job, at least at Boost, is to have what we would call a sales conversation, which is very, very different than, well, how much does it cost, or what kind of surgery do I need, or whatever. The other day we had a patient asking about technology and surgery and all these very, very kind of clinical level questions. Our job in that sales conversation is really kind of simple. Number one, our job is to get them to a consult. That's it. Our job is to get them to a consult. And the way that you do that is you listen and you have empathy, and you literally just be a listening ear, right? It's not to gather all the details. It's not to answer all the clinical level questions. A sales call, by definition, is listening more than you speak, making them trust you, sharing empathy, things of that nature, so that you're building trust, with that lead, and that helps you move them to consult. So that's a really big deal. It highlights, I think, Jonah, I'm glad you asked it. It highlights another challenge I think that people in the clinics have, which is they're in a rush, right? Again, they didn't wake up wanting to do sales that morning. And so their job is like, "Hey, are you available Wednesday at 9?" It's a very matter of fact, and, just like move them along. And that is not the most effective strategy. The most effective strategy is listening, being patient, being empathetic, and having that conversation to gain their trust, which is going to help you book more consults in the end. All right, Michael, I really appreciate you. Thanks for joining today. Any final words before we wrap this bad boy up?
I don't think I have any final words. I just hope that everybody got something out of this today. And if anybody has any questions or would like to review, happy to do it.
Love it. Michael, I appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, great.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.